Desire is a powerful force, captivating the hearts of many, especially men. But why does it seem that for some, desire becomes a consuming, almost enslaving force? Why does the male psyche often fixate on women not as equals to connect with, but as something to possess or conquer? The question isn't just philosophical, it strikes at the heart of human relationships. Men, driven by a deep hunger, relentlessly pursue women, not always for love, but for something darker, something that binds them to a never-ending chase. This relentless obsession often hides deeper insecurities and unmet needs, masquerading as romance. Today, we're going to explore what one of history's most radical thinkers, Diogenes of Sinope, had to say about this obsession. Diogenes, with his harsh critiques of societal norms and his life of radical simplicity, may hold the key to understanding the true nature of male desire. Let us begin uncovering his perspective, a perspective so raw that it challenges everything we thought we knew about love, freedom, and male identity. Diogenes was no ordinary philosopher. He was a symbol of rebellion against the constraints and illusions of his society. Born in Sinope, modern-day Turkey in the 4th century BCE, Diogenes rejected everything that was deemed valuable by the world: wealth, fame, comfort, even social acceptance. He lived in a barrel, rejected the trappings of society, and considered it his life's mission to expose its hypocrisies. Diogenes was not content with surface-level critiques. He wanted to uncover the truths that lay beneath societal facade. His critiques weren't just against kings or aristocrats, they targeted everyone, including the masses who were trapped in the cycle of desire and materialism. Why did Diogenes care so deeply about desire? Because he believed that society was built on illusions, artificial needs, pretenses, and distractions that kept people from truly understanding themselves. One of the greatest of these illusions, Diogenes argued, was the obsessive pursuit of women. Men, he believed, weren't truly desiring women for their humanity, but rather for what they represented: status, validation, and a sense of power. Diogenes was radical in his disdain for the idea that a man's worth should be tied to his ability to attract women. His lifestyle, his refusal to participate in society's rituals, and his mockery of men who depended on women's validation were all parts of his larger message. True freedom comes not from acquisition, but from rejection of these societal constructs. What is it about the desire for women that entraps so many men? Diogenes believed that most men were not in pursuit of women for love or companionship, but for the symbols women represented: power, social status, and validation. He saw this desire as a way of filling an emotional void, a gap that could never be truly satisfied. Men were chasing something external, unaware that the source of their emptiness lay within. This obsession was not about the woman herself, it was about the idea of her. It's a question worth asking. Do men really desire women, or do they desire the validation and the power that come with winning her over? According to Diogenes, most men have never truly asked themselves who they would be without this need. In his eyes, obsession was a symptom of something deeper: a lack of self-awareness, a disconnection from one's true essence. The pursuit of women becomes an escape, a means of compensating for deeper emotional wounds. This question, who are you without your desire for women, strikes at the very core of Diogenes' philosophy. He believed that true freedom came from within, not from external validation. The desire for women, according to Diogenes, was the product of societal expectations, not an authentic need. Men had been conditioned to believe that their worth was dependent on how many women they could attract, how much attention they could garner. This is where Diogenes' radical wisdom cuts through the illusion. If a man could live without craving women's approval, what would he become? He would be free, not just free from society's expectations, but free from the tyranny of needing someone else to complete him. Diogenes lived as an example of this freedom. His rejection of desire was not an act of hate or bitterness. It was an act of self-liberation. The question, who are you without your desire for women, forces men to confront their dependencies and acknowledge that, perhaps, they are more than the roles society has assigned them. Diogenes didn't just criticize the superficial pursuit of women, he recognized it as a form of internal enslavement. Men, he believed, were enslaved not by chains or kings, but by their own desires. The obsession with women was an invisible chain, one that bound men to societal expectations and superficial validation. The modern world perpetuates this cycle. From advertisements to films to social media, the message is clear. A man is only worth as much as the attention he can garner from women. But Diogenes saw through this. He mocked the idea that women should dominate a man's thoughts or his life. His message was that a man should not become a beggar for affection or validation. When men lose themselves in the pursuit of women, they surrender their own dignity. This is not natural desire, it's societal conditioning, a dependence fostered by culture, family, and peer pressure. Diogenes' harsh critique of this obsession was not just about rejecting external validation, but about reclaiming personal autonomy. To Diogenes, the obsession with women was a prison of the mind, not just the body. Diogenes' lifestyle was a direct rejection of societal norms. By living with nothing, by renouncing all material wealth and comforts, he was able to free himself from the chains that society had placed on him. He didn't need possessions, relationships, or status to define him. He had stripped away all the illusions that others clung to. Diogenes' freedom was radical, not in its external appearance, but in its internal clarity. He didn't desire women as society taught men to do. He didn't need their approval or validation. This was not about misogyny, it was about rejecting the idea that a man should seek fulfillment through external sources. When a man becomes free from these desires, he becomes ungovernable. Diogenes lived this freedom every day, becoming a symbol of defiance against the structures that sought to control men through their desire. Diogenes did not despise women. He despised the illusion that women existed to fill the emotional voids of men. He believed that when a man's worth is defined by his ability to attract women, the relationship becomes one of need, not love. This is where Diogenes' philosophy diverges from the traditional view of desire. Love, for him, was never supposed to be about dependence. It was supposed to be about choice, about two people coming together because they wanted to, not because they needed each other to feel whole. The danger, as Diogenes saw it, was that society had conditioned men to seek out relationships based on their emotional voids. This led to a corrupted version of love built on insecurity, on the need for validation. To Diogenes, any relationship that was rooted in this kind of need would never be genuine. His message was clear. When men base their relationships on the need for validation, they are ultimately enslaving themselves to their own desires. Love should not be a contract of dependency, but a mutual connection built on personal freedom. From an early age, men are conditioned by culture, family, and society to measure their value by how attractive they are to women. Diogenes critiqued this deeply ingrained societal construct. In his eyes, the obsession with women was a direct result of cultural programming. Society celebrates the idea that men are valuable when they attract women, when they can perform the role of the romantic hero. Media, peer influence, and even family members enforce these expectations, and men are led to believe that they need to prove their worth through romantic conquests. Diogenes rejected these values entirely. He saw the value of a man not in how much he could acquire, or how many women desired him, but in how well he could master his own desires. The modern world only reinforces this obsession, with every advertisement, movie, and piece of popular culture telling men that their worth is directly tied to their ability to attract attention. Diogenes, however, pointed out the fallacy in this. True freedom, he argued, comes from rejecting these societal pressures and understanding that a man's worth is not defined by others, but by his own internal value system. There is an anecdote from Diogenes' life that perfectly illustrates his disdain for societal obsession with women. Diogenes once publicly mocked a wealthy man who paraded his romantic conquests in the agora, the marketplace. This man believed that his worth was demonstrated by how many women followed him. Diogenes, seeing this as a profound misunderstanding of freedom, quipped, "You think you're free because women follow you, but you are more enslaved than the lowest servant." This moment is a critique not just of the man, but of the culture that celebrated such behavior. To Diogenes, the true slave was the man who sought external validation, whether through romantic success or social admiration. The real freedom, Diogenes argued, was found in the rejection of the need for external affirmation. The wealthy man, though he might have appeared free, was ultimately enslaved by his own desires, by his own need to be desired. Diogenes' life and actions serve as a reminder that external approval, especially from women's, should never be the measure of a man's worth. The obsession with women is not simply about physical attraction or romantic love. Diogenes believed that the desire for women was a symptom of a deeper absence within the man himself. Men, he argued, were often unaware that their desire was rooted in an emotional void. The pursuit of women wasn't about love, it was about filling a gap, something they felt was missing inside themselves. This realization is uncomfortable, but important. How much of what men desire is truly theirs, and how much has been implanted by the expectations of family, culture, or media? Diogenes was challenging men to confront this very question. He wanted them to realize that their obsession with women, their need for validation, was not natural, it was something conditioned by societal norms. The obsession wasn't about the woman, it was about the man's inability to see his own worth without external validation. This is the crucial difference between authentic desire and manufactured dependency. The obsession with women, Diogenes believed, was not just a personal issue. It was something that had been actively cultivated by the structures of power. From kings and emperors to the systems of media and culture, the obsession with women was used to manipulate and control men. By keeping men fixated on women, those in power could distract them from more important questions and prevent them from realizing their true potential. Diogenes, with his radical philosophy, understood this manipulation. He saw how the pursuit of women could keep men distracted, working tirelessly to satisfy a need that was artificially created. The obsession with women became a tool mechanism designed to keep men in a constant state of longing, consuming products and ideas, all while remaining unaware of the real forces at play. To Diogenes, this was a form of enslavement, one that wasn't as obvious as physical chains, but was just as effective. The solution, he argued, was to reject the system's programming and reclaim one's freedom. In the modern world, the obsession with women is not just reinforced by societal norms, but is actively promoted through media. From advertisements to romantic films, from social media influencers to pop songs, a singular message is relentlessly broadcast to the male psyche. You are not enough until she wants you. These cultural products are designed to keep men focused on a singular pursuit, to be desired by women and, thus, to be seen as valuable in society. Diogenes would have seen this as a brilliant continuation of the illusions he fought against. Today, men are not just chasing women, they are chasing the idealized image of women constructed by the media. This ideal has been carefully crafted to serve the interests of industries that profit from men's desire, as fashion, fitness, entertainment, and luxury goods, to name a few. Men become consumers, not just of products, but of fantasies and ideals that society has implanted in their minds. What Diogenes would have found most disturbing is that, like the wealthy man in the agora, many men today are enslaved by these fantasies. The pursuit of women, or what they represent, becomes a never-ending cycle of consumption and performance. The more men chase this ideal, the more they feed the industries that thrive on their insecurities. Diogenes' radical freedom stands in stark contrast to this system. He rejected all external ideals and lived authentically, unbothered by the noise of consumer culture. One of the most profound concepts Diogenes would have recognized in today's world is the idea of mimetic desire. Introduced by philosopher Gerard, mimetic desire refers to the concept that people often desire what others desire. We do not desire things in isolation. Instead, we learn what to desire by observing others. This creates a cycle of competition, where men don't just desire women, they desire the status of being desired by them. Diogenes was keenly aware of this dynamic. He understood that much of male desire is not truly personal, but is instead mimicked from the desires of others. Men aren't competing for love. They're competing for visibility, for status, for a sense of identity that is tied to their ability to attract women. This dynamic is compounded by social media and modern advertising, where everyone's desires are put on display for comparison. For Diogenes, this kind of competition was a form of enslavement. It kept men in a cycle of mimetic desire, constantly chasing after an ideal that was never truly their own. The obsession with women, in this sense, becomes not just a personal need, but a societal mechanism that forces men into perpetual competition for external validation. The question, then, is not just whom men desire, but why they desire it at all. Diogenes' message: break free from the cycle. Desire what you truly want, not what society tells you to chase. The ultimate question that Diogenes posed, and one that modern men must confront, is this: what is true desire? Is desire for women about love and connection, or is it about something deeper? Diogenes believed that the true source of obsession wasn't women themselves, but the deeper emotional wounds men were trying to heal. Men, Diogenes thought, were not chasing women out of pure romantic longing, but because they were seeking to fulfill unmet emotional needs. This insight cuts to the heart of male obsession with women. When men ask themselves what they are truly seeking, they must realize that often their desire isn't about the woman, but about the self, about what they believe she can provide. She becomes the mirror into which they project their insecurities, their unmet desires for validation, approval, and emotional completeness. Diogenes challenged men to look beyond their obsession and confront this deeper truth. Desire is not always about the object of affection, but about the need for something the man believes is missing within himself. It's a question of self-awareness and introspection. What are you truly searching for when you chase after women? Is it love, or is it something else, entirely something you can give yourself? For Diogenes, freedom wasn't just about rejecting material possessions. It was about rejecting the very idea that a man's worth should be dependent on anything outside of himself. His radical freedom came from within, not from external sources. Diogenes didn't need wealth, he didn't need power, and he didn't need romantic conquests to define his identity. He had stripped away all illusions, all the societal constructs that bound others, and in doing so, he became truly free. This freedom was deeply unsettling to those around him. Men who were obsessed with women, status, and approval could not understand how Diogenes could be content with so little. But Diogenes knew that true freedom comes when a man no longer looks outside himself for fulfillment. The free man doesn't need to chase external validation. He is free from the need for approval, whether from women or society at large. In the modern world, Diogenes' message is as relevant as ever. The key to freedom lies not in accumulating more, but in rejecting the dependencies that society has placed on us. To live as Diogenes did is to live a life without illusions, without the need to impress, without the need for approval from others. This is the path to true freedom. Diogenes was profoundly aware of the danger of dependency in any form, especially emotional dependency. Dependency stifles personal growth and traps individuals in a cycle of need and longing. Whether it's dependency on material possessions, power, or relationships, Diogenes saw all of these as forms of slavery. The more a person depends on something outside of themselves, the more they give up their freedom. In relationships, dependency manifests as the need for validation, affection, or approval. Diogenes rejected this. To him, any relationship that is built on the foundation of need is already corrupted. True relationships, Diogenes argued, must be built on mutual respect and choice, not on the need for emotional fulfillment. When men become dependent on women for their self-worth, they become slaves to their desires, incapable of true freedom. The solution, according to Diogenes, was to embrace radical self-sufficiency, not in terms of material wealth, but in terms of emotional and psychological independence. To Diogenes, the ultimate freedom was freedom from the need for validation. He didn't need women to validate his worth, nor did he need societal approval. This idea of radical self-sufficiency was central to his philosophy. True freedom, he believed, came when a man no longer relied on external sources for affirmation. When a man is no longer dependent on validation from others, he becomes unshakable. He is no longer driven by the need to prove his worth through external means, but by an internal sense of value. In the modern world, this principle is more important than ever. Men today are constantly bombarded by messages that tell them their worth is defined by external factors: how much money they have, how many women desire them, how successful they are in the eyes of others. Diogenes' life was a radical rejection of all of this. He lived not for the approval of others, but for his own internal peace and freedom. And in doing so, he showed us that true fulfillment comes not from the outside world, but from within. One of the most famous encounters in Diogenes' life was his meeting with Alexander the Great. Alexander, the most powerful man in the world at the time, was curious about the philosopher who had rejected all the luxuries of life. Legend has it that one day, Alexander approached Diogenes while the philosopher was basking in the sun. With respect and curiosity, Alexander asked Diogenes, "Is there anything I can do for you?" Without hesitation, Diogenes responded, "Yes, stand out of my sunlight." This moment, seemingly simple, speaks volumes about Diogenes' philosophy. Here was the most powerful man in the world, an emperor with vast armies and wealth at his disposal, and yet Diogenes, a beggar by outward appearance, was freer than he could ever be. Diogenes' refusal to accept anything from Alexander wasn't out of spite or disrespect. It was a declaration of independence. He needed nothing from Alexander, because Diogenes had already achieved what Alexander could never buy: true freedom. For Diogenes, true freedom was not dependent on power, wealth, or external recognition. It was the ability to live independently of society's demands. In a world where most men would have bowed to a king, Diogenes showed that the ultimate freedom comes from within, a freedom that can't be bought, but only earned by shedding all dependence on the world around us. To embrace Diogenes' path of freedom, one must first recognize that it requires radical simplicity, not just in possessions, but in desires. Diogenes' life wasn't about rejecting material wealth for the sake of poverty, it was about rejecting the belief that anything outside of the self could define who you are. His rejection of societal norms, of the need for external approval, and of the pursuit of validation was an act of immense clarity. Radical simplicity doesn't mean living without joy or pleasure. It means shedding the unnecessary distractions that prevent you from understanding your true self. It's about stripping away the illusions that tell you who you should be, how you should live, and what you should desire. In the modern world, where people are constantly told what they should want and who they should be, embracing radical simplicity can be a transformative act. It's about recognizing that you don't need anything outside of yourself to be whole. True fulfillment comes not from accumulating things, but from understanding that what you truly need has always been inside you. Diogenes lived this simplicity fully. He lived without pretension, without the desire to impress others, and without the need for external validation. To live as Diogenes did is to live a life of profound internal clarity and freedom, one that requires no justification or explanation to the world. In the final analysis, Diogenes' radical message is one of living without obsession. The pursuit of women, or the pursuit of anything external, only serves to distract men from their true selves. The question that Diogenes forces us to confront is simple yet profound. How much of what we desire is truly ours, and how much has been conditioned by the world around us? Diogenes' philosophy challenges us to strip away these illusions and live without the need for external approval. When we no longer need others to define us, we become free. When we no longer need validation from women, we can form relationships that are built on mutual respect and genuine connection, rather than need. The path to freedom, as Diogenes saw it, is not a path to isolation or bitterness. It's a path to wholeness, a realization that we are enough just as we are. We do not need anyone to complete us, nor do we need to prove our worth through external validation. When we can live without the hunger for validation, we begin to live in a state of pure freedom. In this way, Diogenes teaches us the most radical truth of all, that true freedom comes not from what we acquire, but from what we let go. When we stop chasing, we begin to live, and in that living, we find peace. Diogenes' life and philosophy are a testament to this truth. In rejecting the societal constructs of desire and validation, he showed that true fulfillment lies in simplicity, self-sufficiency, and living according to one's true values. He dared to live without the chains of obsession, and, in doing so, he became the freest man who ever lived.